So whenever we say that you have to answer to 31 billionaires, how accurate is that?
32. Well, you're not counting Green Bay?
Yeah. Is that an accurate
I
assessment?
don't actually think that way. I actually think I answer to them. I think I answer to the media partners. I think I answer the players. I think I answer the owners too. The idea for me is to try to keep everyone happy. I always say that my biggest job is not to piss off more than 24 owners in a given day.
That, to me, was one of the most fascinating things that Roger Goodell said during his appearance on Pat McAfee Show on Friday, because with the last thing he said that drew the big laugh, he essentially admitted that everything he said right before that isn't true. He doesn't answer to us. He doesn't answer to you.
No way. We answer to him totally. Like, it's not even close.
We genuflect at the altar of Roger Goodell.
Exactly.
He says jump, and we don't even stop to say how high.
Right.
I mean, and just, you know what? I'm sitting here as I'm saying it, wondering how much trouble I'm going to get in for saying it. So, baloney. He doesn't answer to anybody but the people who decide who the commissioner is going to be and how much the commissioner is going to get paid. And there are hierarchies within there. Some of the 24 you want to keep happier than others, especially the ones on the compensation committee who decide what your bonus is every year. Look, they tried that crap with me during the lockout. Goodell was on this show back when it was digital, 2011. And, well, keep in mind, the commissioner is the commissioner of all constituencies in the sport, from the players at every level to the coach. Baloney! He is the arm of the owners. He is the guy they hide behind. He is the pay no attention to the men behind the curtain. The men behind the curtain are the ones telling the disembodied head with the flashpots on each side what to say and do. And he's the one that takes all the heat for it and gets a big fat paycheck. And then he goes on a show where he comes off as a regular guy. I'm going to stop right there. What he said was not true, and he admitted it with the joke he told at the end. That, to me, was truly mind-blown emoji.
Yeah, well, I mean, the NFL...
And I'm going to get in trouble for the last 2 minutes.
Well,
that just proves that what he said wasn't true. You want to prove me wrong?
Yeah.
Don't complain. Don't get me in trouble. Please, please, please. I promise to be
Well, no,
good.
I'm literally waiting for
trouble.
the text on my phone to pop up here and like somebody from our company to go, be
somebody
careful,
telling us shut up,
careful.
move on.
Yeah. But no, I mean, again, this is not to our company. This is to anybody that's involved with the NFL. The NFL, once they get in a deal with you, they tell you how to run it. They're the bosses. You know, to your point,
the customer is never right.
To your point, it's the customer in his life is the 24 owners, like he's talking about. It's always be right about them, or the 31 owners right out there. That is what it's all about, certainly. And it's all about that, and of course, trying to make the sport bigger and better. And within that, yeah, there's people in the sport that get frustrated because they feel like everything is always looked at through the owner's lens. And I know there's coaches and GMs out there that always are bothered by that because they want, hey, think about some of the other people in the business here. It's not always through the owners, but that's the way it is, and it's hard to argue right now. I mean, it's hard to argue with 800,000 people in Detroit for the draft this weekend and, ratings galore where the rest of the world's like, wait, you guys are sitting around for 4 hours just watching people get picked like there's no game or anything? The whole world thinks we're crazy. That's how awesome football is right now. So I can't be too mad at Roger for what he's doing there.
It's the ultimate reality show about nothing.
It is amazing.
They could do anywhere, they could do nowhere. They could do it by group text, and they've turned this thing into this mass gathering of humanity. But again, I got no problem with that.
Yeah, I know.
Don't just let's try to reside in reality. We have a hard enough time in this day and age finding common ground and residing in reality. And the reality is, we know who he works for, and he knows who he works for. Okay. Here is something else that came up, because there were a lot of very important topics that were hit during his half hour or so with the McAfee crew. Here he is on the issue of full-time referees, something you and I have wanted for a long time, something a lot of you people have wanted. Here's what he had to say about it.
We did a little bit of that right before COVID and stopped it during COVID just because of the circumstances. And we didn't see a difference. It doesn't mean that we did it right. So we still look at it. But I'm also sitting back and I'm watching a lot of playoff basketball, hockey. I'm hearing a lot about officials, and all of those guys are full-time. And my only point to that is this is a human game. It's a fast game. They're people like you and I. They make mistakes.
Got it.
For us, the way to correct it is to try to add technology. And so replay assist is something we're bringing even further in this year. But it was really more, they wanted the call to be made by the referee on the field. And it still is, but we're giving the referee more input.
Assistance. Yeah, a little bit more help.
Whether it's the replay official or whether it's somebody in New York that's looking down and says, I saw that, his foot's out of bounds at the 3.
Got
and
it.
You missed it. The idea is here to be consistent in officiating and avoid those errors that are game-changing. Right?
Yeah.
Officiating is part of the game.
Look, I'm not going to complain about the embrace of technology. That is something that is long overdue. They need to bridge the gap between what we all see in super high def, crystal clear, and the people on the field trying not to get trampled by the gladiators. That's great. But you should still have full-time officials. And the whole what about, hockey and basketball have full-time officials and people complain about them too. First of all, I have a hard time picturing him in his leather chair in his basement watching a lot of playoff basketball and hockey. Maybe I've misjudged, and I don't either. So it's not. That's an image that I'm having a hard time conjuring. But that's not the point. The point is, number one, having full-time officials creates the perception the NFL is doing everything it possible to get all calls right. Number two, when you have full-time officials, that's your full focus professionally. You're not balancing multiple jobs. It's not the thing you do when you put the kids to bed after you've worked all day at your other job in the middle of the season. You're going to take your tablet out and read for a half hour and get ready. No, the one thing, and I've had this argued by people in the sport who are pushing for full-time officials. You have a central location. They all go there every week. They have full day of meetings where they go over everything that happened and they strive for consistency. You band them all together. Every week, they're all together looking at plays and understanding this is how we deal with this situation. So you don't have 17 little tribes out there doing what they think is best. You bring them all together and you keep them all together all year long. That's what full-time officials would do. But you know what the problem is, Chris? Yeah. It ain't free. And they're cheap. They don't want to spend the money for it, plain and simple.
Yeah, plain and simple. We know that, right? Consistency, experience, anything like that always makes you better at your job. It doesn't matter who we talk about, what we talk about, whatever, right? Patrick Mahomes has gotten to play and be consistent, and he's got a lot of experience, and we're seeing him grow, and it's like, okay, it's unstoppable. Look what he's doing. Like, I mean, it's a little ridiculous that they argue this point at times, right? They argue it, and I want to go, stop talking to me like I'm an idiot. Like, stop. Roger, then be a part-time commissioner and tell me how that works for the sport. Like, just be part-time. Hey, we don't really need you now for a little while. Take some time off, and then come back around the Super Bowl or whatever, and it'll be good. Just tell me how good you think you're going to be at your job. I mean, anybody. That's so. It's such a load of crap, that kind of comment. Of course, them being all in all the time, seeing it every day, being coached, watching film, being around it more, getting a better feel for the game, right? Getting a better feel for movements and things that happen and going, oh, wait, that's not a real holding. That guy just got dominated, right? We see that stuff every week where I go, that wasn't holding. That was a dumb ref who just looked over and went, he got dominated. He must have been held, so I'm going to throw it up there. No, experience and being there all the time will help things like that. So, yes, it's ludicrous for them to argue that point. It's all about money. That's all it is, and that's the bottom line.
And the perception is critical because of legalized wagering. The quote that we have shared many times about Goodell from 2012 pushing back hard against the legalization of gambling because normal incidents of the game will lead to a belief that the fix is in. And we have been dealing with that. Everyone thinks the fix is in.
Well, wait, so one last thing there, just because like everybody, you bring up the hockey and basketball have full-time officials and people are still complaining. We understand. That's never going to stop. But what we need to do is then go back, let's go back to when it wasn't full-time and see maybe were there calls being missed and whatever else. And now are those being called more consistently in the right way? Well, that's where you would look at it.
They're also full-time because they play 4 or 5 games a week.
Yes,
You can't
so
not
it's
be
different.
full-time.
Exactly.
The schedule dictates that
Right.
you're full-time.
Right.
I'm talking about full-time all year long. Always, this is the only
right.
thing you do. When you, let me finish this, Pete. I used to practice law full-time and do this job full-time. When I did only this job with all my focus and all my effort, it all changed. And I think that's true for any job out there. Okay. Right. So on this issue of the perception that the fix is in, which you and I hear all the time from audience and social media, et cetera, here's Goodell answering a question to that effect from Darius Butler on Friday's show.
I haven't felt that at all. I think for us, it's always just constantly what it is we need to do to make the game better. Obviously, when you have sports betting that's legalized, it was illegal at the time, so we still protected its integrity. We didn't support making it legal. The Supreme Court made the decision. We've got to adjust to that. And when we did, you do have to be partnering with some of these partners because they actually give us access to information that can detect something before it really becomes a problem. And so we get a lot of information by being involved there. People think that's, conflicting with our previous position, but we just have to adjust to whatever the law is. That's the way it works.
Well, I'll take that as a comment directed at me because I'm the one who's been saying most loudly that they are speaking out of both sides of their mouth. They hated gambling until they loved it. And they finally came up with a talking point that is semi-plausible. This idea that we've got to partner with the companies that can tattle on the players who are violating our rules. That's the best justification they can come up with. The reality, though, Chris, is it is a cash grab. Sponsorships, data sales, and the one thing that they never talk about, and there's no transparency in this regard either, owners allowed to hold up to 5% ownership of companies that operate sportsbook. That is where the money is. The money in gambling is in being the house. The NFL owners have license to be the house. That's why they're in bed with it. They could have said, we still hate gambling, we shun gambling, we're going to work with our players and our coaches and our teams and our fans to avoid gambling. No. They embraced it because of the cash, and they will never admit it.
Well, yeah. Of course. I don't think anybody thinks that's not the case. I mean, what helped it get to the Supreme Court and push it through? It's the gambling companies, it's the casinos, and it was the sports franchise owners behind the scenes making sure it got through. Like baloney, like another baloney comment. We didn't support making it legal, like out there publicly. But there was people working behind the scenes to make sure it became legal because they knew it meant billions of dollars coming their way. So, whatever. We just got to stay on top of it. We know that it's the reality of our world right now. And the NFL, I still think at the end of the day, the best thing is to have full-time officials to appeal to everybody and ease everybody's concerns with gambling and the fixes in and all of that crap. And I think at the end of the day, it's a small price to pay with having officials be a part of a union or whatever for the money they're making and the integrity of sport and everything that goes along with it.
One of the things that, and this is a point of appreciation, it may sound like criticism, but it's not. Maybe it is. I don't know. But it's just reality. And there's parallels between Goodell and Aaron Rodgers on Pat McAfee's show. What happens is the topics get teed up, controversial topics, in kind of a jokey, funny way. It's not Mike Wallace grilling someone on 60 Minutes, but the topic is brought up in kind of a funny way. The person then says whatever they want to say with no pushback, with no follow-up. They just say it. Like a lot of the stuff we're saying today could have been brought up during the interview, but it disrupts the vibe of, hey, it's kind of jokey and we're going to touch on these controversial topics and let you say whatever you want to say without pushback. But then what it does, it gives us a way 3 days later to come in and say, here's all the stuff he said that should be scrutinized. So you put the two ends together and you got something. The problem is we're the ones who are going to get in trouble because we're the ones who are saying that, some of that stuff is BS. Oh, and one last point. Andrew Barry, remember when he was with us at the scouting combine, Chris, and they had the proposal for moving the trade deadline, and it was 2 weeks, one to account for 17 games, and the second week to account for the inevitable 18th game. And that was all. The reaction, we don't know why they want a second week. That was the league's position. Goodell let the cat out of the bag. I mean, the push has begun for 18, and he ties it to how much he hates the preseason. Look, I may not live long enough for this, Chris, but there's going to be 20 games and no preseason games one of these days. Write it down. I may be dead by then, but there's going to be 20 games and no preseason games. Bet on it.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. It seems like the way we're going, slowly but surely it'll be more and more. And, I think we all know it'll be 18 within the next 4 to 5 years.
Yeah, and the union's going to roll over. I saw somebody say, the union better be ready to demand concessions. Baloney. They're going to get more money. They're going to roll over for it, and they know what's going to happen if they don't. They get locked out until they cry uncle and do. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.